A small colony is built on the edge of a vast wilderness. More than 100 people arrive with hope, ready to start a new life. A few months later, their leader sails back to England to collect supplies, promising to return as quickly as possible. But when he finally comes back, the colony is empty. Every man, woman, and child has disappeared. There are no bodies, no signs of battle, no letters explaining what happened. Only one word carved into a wooden post: CROATOAN. More than 400 years later, historians are still asking the same question: what really happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? Hello everyone, welcome to Mysteon. Today we are looking into one of history's most fascinating unsolved mysteries, so let's get started. The dream of a new colony. Our story begins in 1587, during a time when European nations were racing to explore and settle new lands. England wanted a permanent colony in North America. Such a settlement would strengthen its influence, create new trade opportunities, and challenge Spain's growing power across the Atlantic. To make that dream a reality, 3 ships carrying 115 settlers set sail for Roanoke Island, located along the coast of what is now North Carolina. This was not simply an expedition, it was the beginning of a new community. Among the passengers were farmers, craftsmen, women, and children. They carried seeds, tools, and supplies, hoping to build homes instead of temporary camps. The colony was led by John White, an experienced explorer, artist, and mapmaker who had already visited the region. During the voyage, something remarkable happened. White's daughter, Eleanor Dare, gave birth to a baby girl named Virginia Dare. She became the first English child born in North America. For the settlers, it was a symbol of hope and reminder that they were not just exploring a distant land. They were trying to build a future. Life was harder than expected. That dream quickly collided with reality. Roanoke was beautiful, but surviving there was far from easy. The settlers had limited food, the soil and climate were unfamiliar. They struggled to grow enough crops, and many of the supplies they had bought from England were running low. Relationships with nearby Native American communities were also complicated. Some tribes traded with the settlers and offered assistance. Others distracted the newcomers because of earlier conflicts involving previous English expeditions. Every day became a challenge. The colony needed more food, better tools, fresh seeds, and additional equipment if it was going to survive. Without outside help, their future looked uncertain. After discussing their situation, the settlers made a difficult decision. Governor John White would sail back to England and return with everything they needed. It was not an easy choice. His daughter and young granddaughter would remain behind while he crossed one of the most dangerous oceans in the world. Before leaving, White promised he would come back as quickly as possible. At the time, everyone believed he would be gone for only a few months. None of them knew they were saying goodbye for the last time. A promise delayed. When John White arrived in England, he immediately began preparing another voyage. But events beyond his control changed everything. England was facing the threat of invasion by the Spanish Armada. Almost every available ship was needed for national defense. The mission to Roanoke was pushed aside. White searched for another way to return. He waited, he negotiated, he tried again, but nothing worked. Weeks turned into months, months turned into years. Meanwhile, the settlers on Roanoke had no idea why help was not coming. There were no letters crossing the Atlantic, no ships bringing supplies, no way to know whether White was even alive. The colony had been completely cut off from the rest of the world. Finally, in 1590, nearly 3 years after leaving, John White secured passage back to North America. During the journey, he imagined seeing his family again. He pictured new houses, healthy farms, a thriving community. Most of all, he looked forward to meeting his granddaughter, who would now be 3 years old. As the ship approached Roanoke Island, hope filled the crew, but the moment they landed, that hope disappeared. The empty colony. The settlement was silent. No smoke rose into the sky, no voices echoed through the trees, no children ran toward the shore. White and his men searched every building. The houses were empty. Several structures had been carefully dismantled instead of destroyed. The wooden fort that once protected the colony was gone. What shocked White the most was not what he found, it was what he did not. There were no bodies, no signs of violent attack, no evidence that anyone had fought for their lives. It looked as though the entire settlement had packed up and left. Then White noticed something carved into a wooden post. One word: CROATOAN. At first, it seemed like the clue that would solve everything. Instead, it became the beginning of one of history's greatest mysteries. John White stared at the word carved into the wooden post, CROATOAN. It was not a random message. Before leaving for England, White and the settlers had agreed that if they ever moved, they would leave behind the name of their new location if they had been forced to leave because of danger. They would also carve a cross, but there was no cross, only the word CROATOAN that suggested the settlers may have left by choice rather than during a violent attack. CROATOAN was the name of nearby island, now called Hatteras Island, where a Native American community lived. White wanted to search the island immediately, believing he might finally find his family. But bad weather and dangerous sea forced the ship to turn back. He never returned to Roanoke again. So what happened to the settlers? The strongest theory is that they relocated the CROATOAN Island after realizing that help from England was not coming. With food running low, joining a nearby community may have been their best chance of survival. Over time, they may have blended into Native American society. Another theory suggests that disease and starvation slowly weakened the colony. Some settlers may have died while others scattered in search of food and safety. A violent attack has been suggested, but historians point out an important problem. John White found no burned buildings, no weapons, and no human remains. If the colony had been destroyed in a large battle, some evidence would likely have remained. Centuries later, archaeologists uncovered English pottery, metal tools, and other European artifacts on Hatteras Island. While these discoveries don't prove exactly what happened, they support the idea that at least some settlers may have lived among the Native American communities. More than 400 years later, the lost colony of Roanoke remains one of history's greatest mysteries. The evidence points towards survival rather than a sudden disappearance. But without definitive proof, the full story may never be known. What do you think really happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Mysteon for more real mysteries and case studies. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.